Hi, good afternoon, Johnny. How are you? Thank you for accepting the invitation for this project. How are you doing
I'm
today?
very good. I'm good, Rafael. Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Great, thanks so much. Today, everybody who's watching for the first time, perhaps, we are interviewing Johnny Muteba, who is from South Africa, a place very close to my heart. I lived in South Africa and I was there a few years ago for the World Cup. So it's a place that I like a lot. My family and I had really enjoyed the country, and it's a beautiful place for everyone to visit. So the idea of this project, Johnny, again, and for those watching, is to create a space to invite international experts like Johnny, who work in business in different markets around the world, to talk about the cultural and communication aspects of doing business in their countries. And as I have been doing with the other interviewees, we have 7 questions, the same question to everyone. So we will begin now. The first question, Johnny, I'm sorry. We also have present here Dietrich Watson, who works with Johnny, so she will be accompanying us. So Johnny, the first question, just in general, tell us a little bit about you and what kind of work that you do, please.
Thank you so much, Rafael. It's an honor to be here. I am an entrepreneur, right? But at the core of everything that I do, I am a creative. I consider myself creative. I am innovative. And when you look at my profile on LinkedIn, it actually says the most creative person in Africa, which is actually very exciting for me. But basically, what I do on a day-to-day basis through the Pan-African Chamber of Commerce is designing strategies, economic development strategies that will help governments in Africa bridge the gap between policy and implementation. Apart from that, I'm a sustainable brand innovation expert. So we do a lot of work around sustainable branding, but also helping African countries and government shape their image because we believe strongly as a chamber that the way you are perceived is the way people will actually do business with you. So if you have a bad perception as a nation that is linked to your image, it will affect the way people actually eventually do business with you. So that is what I do as well. But I'm also representing a number of organizations, so I wear multiple hats. One of those hats is to represent the Atlanta Black Chambers of Commerce here in South Africa. I'm also representing the Blacks in Technology Foundation in South Africa, and I've also been able to establish, the Blacks in Tech chapters in a number of countries here on the continent. Brief, my work sits at the intersection of technology, creativity, so technology, commerce, and culture. So that is kind of the foundation of the work that I do on a day-to-day basis. So around creativity, designing strategies, primarily, rural development, youth empowerment, women empowerment as well. So that is basically what I do, primarily through the Pan-African Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you, Johnny. Very, very important work, especially the focus on hands-on practical solutions in several areas. And I understand you work throughout Africa. Just for those watching, we're going to be, when we summarize this interview and put it in our LinkedIn newsletter, we will be highlighting all the organizations Johnny's connected with and leading so that you can get in touch with Johnny if you're interested in collaboration and so forth. So thank you, Johnny. Thank you for explaining a little bit the context. Moving to the second question, what are some things you recommend people to do or say when they're coming first to meet and speak with a person with whom they might initiate a project or business opportunity together in South Africa? And also, what should they not do and or say in this first encounter?
That's a very good question. So the first thing that you do when you come into a new nation, I always ask people to be humble, number one, right? Of course, humility means different things to different people. But when you come into a new nation, before somebody opens up, they open up their home, they open up their hearts, really, as it were, there has to be that level of trust that you are able to build. And you can only build trust after a, a period of time, right? So you need to go and find people where they are. So where do you meet people? Where do you find people? So maybe you can meet somebody at a networking dinner, at a networking event. The first thing that you need to do there is not to speak so much about yourself, but it is to let that other person speak more about themselves because they need to see that you're interested in knowing what they do. So after somebody has spoken and they've told you basically what they do, you can then now, if you want to do business with them, because you cannot, number one, do business with somebody you don't know, whose culture you don't know. So a person you see in front of you is not just one thing. It's basically many, many things. That person is coming from a home, is coming from a culture, has a certain level of education, belongs to a particular religious belief, or all of these things are actually kind of interconnected. So by showing interest in the person, you are actually allowing them to open themselves up to you. So one of the things I always say to people as well, when you come into a new country like South Africa or Zambia or wherever, you must not think everybody knows you, right? Like you are there because you're coming from a particular nation. People are supposed to know everything there is about that particular country. One thing I learned actually when Mandela died, I was like many other people here in South Africa, very sad, but sitting on TV, watching many, many people speaking about him. He said you must always introduce yourself. Do not assume that everybody knows you. So if somebody like Nelson Mandela would say, introduce yourself, and you would see in these videos over and over again, would say, you know, my name is Nelson Mandela, or I am Mandela, over and over again. I started looking at that. And I saw Oprah Winfrey doing the same thing. I am Oprah. Like, who doesn't know who you are? But that is basically the symbol, that is the sign of humility, because it's kind of it equals, so you're starting on an equal footing, as it were. So you come into a new space, introduce yourself, be humble, listen more, talk less, and show interest in the person that you are meeting. They will open up. One discussion is definitely going to lead to a business partnership, but also just being open, being vulnerable as well. I believe it makes a very big difference. Do not assume anything. Go there ready to learn and humble enough that maybe what you're coming, you've got this notion that you have the image already in your mind. You need to forget everything you've read about a particular nation, because sometimes people will sit online and think what they found on Instagram or Facebook is everything this particular culture, this particular nation is all about. But one-on-one conversation with the person will actually go a very long way.
No, fantastic. Very inspirational quote, and absolutely introduce yourself every time you're meeting someone. Don't assume people know you, and perhaps your persona, your profile online is not who you really are. So it's important to introduce yourself in new encounters. So thank you. Very inspirational. The third question, we recognize that it is important to have a deeper cultural understanding of a local place when doing business there. What cultural aspects might be considered when doing business in South Africa? A new company, a foreign business person wants to come in. What cultural aspects should they take into account, Johnny?
I think when somebody comes into a nation like South Africa, they need to be very well aware that South Africa is a nation that is multicultural, and every single culture is different. How you open yourself up to a person maybe speaking Zulu is basically different from a person speaking Sotho. So when you come into South Africa, you need to be very well aware, but also just prepare yourself, maybe just reading a bit about the languages spoken in South Africa. For example, Zulu is one of the most spoken languages here. When I came from Congo into South Africa many, many, many years ago, I thought every black person in South Africa is a Zulu. In fact, we thought that is what we were presented with. But when you get here, you realize that actually there are so many other cultures in South Africa. So you need to read up to know exactly what is different, what is particular about the Zulu culture versus the Xhosa culture or versus the Sotho culture, or for people who speak Afrikaans, right? So arming yourself with that knowledge, but also understanding where South Africa as a nation is coming from. Because you will find, for example, the legacy of the past being so much present now in terms of the people-to-people relations or relationships. So that is quite key to know where South Africa is coming from. It is also very, very good to know the people who are leading. So if you're coming to Johannesburg, it doesn't hurt to know the mayor, right? Not personally though. You need to know at least, what's happening in the South African, political space. You also need to know what is happening maybe around sport or stuff like that. So it is quite important to know. And I realize over and over again, when you start having these conversations with people and they see that you are actually informed, even if you are not well informed, people will always open up. They will always open up to basically engage with you further. So wanting to do business in South Africa, first thing to know is that South Africa is open for business. South Africans are hospitable people. South Africans are warm people. And the only way you can get that warmth from South Africans is by you giving. So you give, first of all, before you expect anybody, to treat you, any differently. So that is my understanding of what needs to be done before we venture into a new nation. You need also to understand the politics of that nation. You need to understand the policies of that nation, because when you do business, in a particular nation, you need to know the rules of the game. You need to know the laws of that nation. So the employment, the labor laws of the nation. So if you don't follow all of that, you're actually going to be in trouble with the authorities, and they will also even get to the point where you become an undesirable person. So you don't want to get to that level. So getting to know the policies, getting to know the labor laws of the nation, and basically understand the South African society, because whenever you are starting a business, you will have to employ South Africans. You will have to employ local people here. And once you work with them, you employ people here, you have to appreciate their culture. You have to appreciate where they're coming from so that they then support your business and your business becomes successful.
Very important, Johnny. Absolutely. My own experience when I was there in 2010, I went for the World Cup and I was in a taxi. I got several taxis, and I think the taxi driver told me they were narrating the game in 7 different languages. So there were different radio stations that they listen to in different languages. It goes to your point that South Africa is a very multicultural nation. We have to understand who we're going to be speaking with or meeting with in a business environment. So I saw it from that experience, just to understand that there's radio stations for all the different languages. That's important to understand the local context. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Johnny. Moving to the 4th question. If someone does not speak English, or perhaps other languages you can mention that is spoken in South Africa, what do you suggest a foreigner do to be able to communicate more successfully with locals in South Africa and to do business there if they don't speak English, for example?
Yeah, so there is a Chinese proverb that says, if you cannot smile, don't sell rice. If you cannot smile, don't open a business, right? So you need to smile. That smile is basically a language on its own, right? So if you don't know the language, I see people from Somalia, people from Ethiopia, Chinese people in South Africa who cannot speak English, but you see people going there, lining up to buy from them. So if you don't know the language, you are coming from some of the countries I mentioned, you're coming into South Africa, you need to be humble, right? The attitude so you don't come actually with the superiority complex. The fact that you don't know the language does not limit you from not learning the language. And what I've also realized is that when the locals actually observe that you want to learn the language, so if you don't know the language and you're already here, you can actually start the process of learning the language. And the only way to learn is by actually finding locals. When they come to you, they come to buy from you, try, right? You need to try, these greetings, for example, and you need to also to be quite aware. So when I go for my walk every morning, there's a petrol station that I pass, and I greet people there. I basically normally use Xhosa, one of the languages. When I came to South Africa, I lived in the Eastern Cape, and sometimes I'll greet people in Xhosa, they will respond in Sotho, for example. So next time I have to greet them in Sotho. Basically, they are telling you something without saying something, right? If you greet somebody in this particular language and they respond in this other language, they're actually telling you that they are more comfortable in this other language. So you need to do that. You need to make the effort, really. So you are here, you want to do business. You need to also surround yourself with people who are from that particular community. In fact, when you are surrounding yourself with people from that particular community, they become like your security, as it were. They will actually become people who are going to protect your business. Should there be anything happening, like with riots in 2021, the locals are actually the people who are going to support and protect your business. But when they realize that you are arrogant, you think you are better, you think you are superior because of where you're coming from, because of the amount of money you have, nobody's going to support you. So that humility and the ability to learn, you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be, in terms of learning the new languages that you find in here, it is going to be very easy to have around you somebody who can teach you kind of a crash course in Zulu, for example. And whenever people realize, when you go to that particular store, that person actually is trying to greet to you in Zulu. Nelson Mandela used to say, when you speak to somebody in a language, they understand you are talking to their head. But when you speak to somebody in their language, you are speaking to their heart. So it's the issue of heart and head. And if you want to succeed in a nation like this one, as far as business is concerned, you need to touch the heart of people. That is when, instead of greeting this person in Xhosa, now you greet them in Sotho. That is now you speaking their language instead of just speaking a language you assume they will understand because they are from here. That also means that you need to pay attention, you need to pay close attention, because people will actually, you will be able to read the energy, be able to feel the energy of the people. So that openness and that flexibility, but also, you need to embrace the culture. I always find it so funny. People come from all over, whether Africa or other places. And when you speak to them, you actually realize that they don't like South Africa. They don't love South Africa. And I'm like, but what's going on? Why would you leave your country? You come to South Africa, yet you are so negative about South Africa. It doesn't make sense to me. So if you were to be thinking this way, I don't think you're supposed to come. So that's the attitude. No, I don't like this nation. I actually don't like what I see happen here. I'm like, I think it's just better you go back. Yeah, it takes humility, but also the passion. Not just about I want to make money and leave. And once you make this money, you can also invest in that community. I'm not talking about spending all your profit, but you need to find if there's a funeral in the community. This is what I used to say to Ethiopians and Somalians, within communities here. When I worked with the city of Johannesburg, I would say to them, yeah, when there's a funeral in the community, go. When there's a soccer tournament, by these young boys, buy them a soccer ball or buy them food, or give them food or chips or stuff like that. That is how you truly become invested in the community. That community, by the way, supports your business. They come and buy from you. So don't just close yourself, in your shop. They come and give you the money. There's no money moving from the shop back to the community. It has to turn that way. And that's how you will be safe, you'll be protected, and you are actually going to be making a difference while you are earning a living in the communities across South Africa.
Very clear. Absolutely, Johnny. Just to recap, so speak from the heart it's recommended to learn a few words in the different languages or who you're going to be working with. And for the short term, somebody that just comes quickly for a meeting or the first time, you said to collaborate with locals, right? From that culture. So just to take note for everyone. So eventually, if you have a more long-term investment, it is recommended to learn a few words from the languages, so which is very important. Thank you, Johnny. Moving to the fifth question. To get better results in visibility or sales, what are your recommendations on the most effective ways to do marketing for products or services in South Africa? This question has to do a little bit more of marketing channels. How do you communicate? So if I'm a foreign business, what do you suggest, recommend them do to get more visibility or communicate with the local culture? A little description of how it's done there in South Africa, please.
So when I came to South Africa many years ago, early 2000s, I used to buy handbags and clothes and shoes, sell them in the Eastern Cape. I wasn't able to speak in English at the time. My English was actually very limited, actually very bad. Let me put it out that way. So what I did, I went into the townships surrounding Port Elizabeth, where I was at the time, and I had these young women who were actually selling the bags that I was. So I would buy bags from Johannesburg, go to the Eastern Cape, or sometimes I would even go to China. So the locals are the best ambassadors for a business. So I would actually give them the stock. They would actually go and sell. And depending on how much you've sold, you know, there is a percentage that you're actually getting. So I was also incentivizing them because they were speaking the language. They were selling my products in the language they understood. So it was easy now for people in those communities to trust them, to the point where sometimes I would give these bags. Somebody would say, if the bag is to sell for $10 and somebody has $8 or $7, I'd say to them, they can take. So it is being flexible. It is also aligning your vision or your business with the locals. Honestly speaking, you cannot thrive in any society if the locals are left behind. You cannot, honestly speaking. So by coming into a nation, learn the culture of that nation. And actually, that's how I learned English, was basically by surrounding myself with people who were speaking a language I could barely understand. But that also became kind of an advantage, in terms of visibility. Um, that was basically the clothing, and every industry is different depending on the budget or the money that you have. There are radio stations in South Africa as well. When you go to cities like Johannesburg, downtown, you will see people are standing there with flyers, like moving billboards, for example. So people are standing there handing over flyers. So if you print 1,000 flyers, maybe you can make a sale right out of that. But also one of the ways to become visible is by giving discounts. So when you give discount, more people actually are going to come. They will go and tell other people. So you can say, we have this discount. We've got the stock that must finish, and this discount is over this weekend, for example. So there are so many, many, many ways. But I believe having ambassadors from that particular community, from that particular culture, is very, very, very important. Talking just from my own experience with the businesses I was running, it became quite easy that now, if you want to expand into another business, people will actually support you. I remember because I had the clothing, stores actually at some point. I had about two or three. I then opened the hair salon. So the very same people, right? I would say to the ladies who are selling the bags, like, oh, I also have a hair salon here. You can come, you can maybe bring your grandmother once a month or so, we can make her look beautiful. It became like a family. And they, of course, went now and brought more people because I was doing that, good service. It was a business for me, but it must not always be about business. You do business with people, and people need to be treated, handled with care. And when you do that and they see that you're genuine about what you want to achieve in that community, they will support your businesses.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in people do business with people. So very, very good point. But Johnny, also just by curiosity, in terms of social media, how is it used in South Africa? Do businesses use Instagram, Facebook? What kind of platforms do you think a business could use also to reach a lot of people, depending on the business, like you said? But is social media used a
Yeah,
lot for in the business world there?
exactly. Social media is used primarily. Instagram is used more. And of course, there's also X that was called Twitter before. Now people are reaching younger people, via TikTok. So companies had to learn to become social media savvy, right? So depending on the demographic, depending on the type of product as well you are selling, so people write things on social media. A place like LinkedIn as well, people are there, professionals, as entrepreneurs, selling products and services. So to navigate that space, you need to know how that functions, or you can pay somebody to do that for you. So South Africa, like many nations on the continent and internationally, social media is widely used, but also activation, offline is very, very important. If there is a physical space where people can actually come and see the products and touch the products, because we know that there are also so many scammers out there. They will be selling you a dream, selling you products that actually don't exist. So you give them the money, they disappear, they deactivate their account and stuff like that. So it's also very good to be aware of some of these issues happening online. As an entrepreneur, don't just buy something because you saw it posted on Instagram by somebody. It's also very good to be vigilant, because once that money is lost, it's never going to come back. So just, yeah, that is basically what I can say.
No, very helpful indeed. Thank you, Johnny. Going to the sixth question. This question is really related to how to generate empathy. You mentioned already a few points which are important. So how do you connect with the locals and generate empathy? If a business partner in South Africa wants to get to know you better and invites you to a local coffee, tea place, a restaurant, or even a virtual happy hour, what kind of topics do people in South Africa like to talk about? That's not business related. So it's just getting empathy started, getting to know the local contacts. What do people talk about? What do they like to talk about?
So South Africans love sports, right? South Africa is a sport mad nation. So, for example, if you come from the UK or you come from France and South Africa beat your team in the final, or you come from Australia or New Zealand, that's actually a very, very good way to start. But also music. South Africans are, according to me, some of the most creative people on the continent. So the knowledge you have of the local culture will actually open doors for you with that particular culture. Don't just go. You need to know the music, maybe 10 years ago, the old music. You need to, and of course, you really need to stay away from politics. I mean, that's something that I always say to people. Please don't get involved. Don't speak about how things used to be in the past and how things are now, because you have a point to score or a score to settle, whatever. Focus on what makes people happy. Sport, very, very big in South Africa. Music, very, very big. Entertainment, very big. So coming into that meeting, knowing, for example, that Tyler, who's a South African musician, just won a Grammy. So if you are from Nigeria and you come into South Africa, it might sound like it's, you are being rivals, but, it's kind of the place is safe. So you can say, yeah, I'm from Nigeria. I'm not happy. Why are you not happy? Because Tyler took the Grammy away from a Nigerian, musician. Something like that. People laugh. They're having a good time. So people open up once they see for sure that you are interested. So apart music, basically entertainment, sports, there is some of the well-known television series here, some of the best movies. Now, even in the time of Netflix, there is so much that you can actually go and watch and open a conversation with a film. Like now, there's a film that came out called The Heart of the Hunter. This movie is #1 in the world on Netflix, made in South Africa. So when you come into this nation, and even if the locals don't know about that particular movie, you actually are coming in like, oh, this man is actually interested. This person is actually interested. And they are definitely going to open up. Mandela is loved, really. If you want to touch politics of a man who's not active politically right now, how was it like in South Africa? So there are levels of politics you can actually get involved in. How was it like when Mandela came out, from prison? How was that like? How was the mood like here in the nation? Were you born? How old were you? That is beautiful. That is really, really interesting, because you are taking this person, in that particular time, space and time, in the history of the nation. Even now, better that we are celebrating 30 years of freedom. So you need to find a way, the balance. But the best thing for South Africa is sports. We love soccer, we love rugby, there's cricket here, there's netball. South Africa actually has so many, disciplines, sport disciplines. So you can choose any of those, and people are actually going to open. And yeah, there's a lot of places where people can eat locally cooked meat here. There's a friend from the US who came and said, I was actually told that the South African the South African word for breakfast is chicken. So people here love eating chicken, like even in the morning. So things like that. So once you know what makes the nation tick, you plug in, not in a negative way. You know, South Africans are easygoing as a people. As long as you leave sensitive stuff out, it will be very
Yeah.
easy
No,
to
absolutely.
do business here.
No, like you said, talk about positive things. I felt this. I've been to South Africa. They're very happy people, very open. Music is very important. I love the mix, the energy that they have. And I found it very interesting in sports. I'm a big sports fan too. They were playing cricket in the beach in Durban when I was in Durban. I mean, I'm from a
Mm.
beach place. I love the beach. I never saw anybody playing cricket. So it was really interesting to see these things. So I had a lot of fun. Yeah, absolutely. Great tips. Very important. I hope everybody's taking notes. Moving to the last question, we could talk for hours, Johnny. It's very rich, the info that the insights you're sharing with us. But this is the last question. What one word should everyone learn to say in English and why? English in terms of the context in South Africa. And why should they say that word? Or a phrase, if you wish.
So I actually want to use kind of the Zulu word that says sawubona. Sawubona means I see you, right? I see you. So what every single human being wants is actually to be seen. I'm not talking about just about business. I'm talking about society as a whole. Do you see me? Can you see me? Do I matter? Am I important? So when you get into a new community, a new nation like South Africa, asking somebody how are you this morning? That is not foreign. That is not strange. How are you this morning simply means that you care. Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening. How are you today? That is an opener. That is actually something that is very, very easy. And I think it's the most important one because people actually see, wow, this person actually cares about my well being, right? How are you today? You greet that person, you ask them how they're doing. They will tell you, ah, this has been a very difficult day. Would you like to speak about it? Sometimes they will say no, and it's okay, right? But opening yourself up to somebody and wanting to know how they are doing, I think it doesn't really matter where you are in the world, unless with some other nations. Like, why would you ask me how I am doing? But in South Africa, it's not the case. Whenever you greet strangers in the streets, you pass and you greet people, they respond. Especially when I was in the Eastern Cape, this happens quite a lot. It's only when I went, when I go to Cape Town. Cape Town is kind of a different city, has a different vibe. But other places, you find people are very, very warm. They want to engage and they want also to know that you care for them, you care about them. So asking somebody, how are you doing today? What can I do for you? Right? If you have the means, and what can I do for you is not just about, give me money and do this for me. Uh, that is what is quite important here in South Africa. Once people realize that you are interested, they open up and you build the foundation of friendship or business opportunity from just that conversation with that particular opener.
Great, Johnny. Also, if you can spell that out later, send it to me the name in the Zulu word. I see you. I think it's a very inspirational word, and I like to share that in the article. But I agree with you. This human connection. We have come to an end, unfortunately. But I wanted to thank Johnny in the presence of Dietrich as well for being part of this project. Thank you for sharing your insights, your recommendation, valuable experiences. I hope this interview also benefits you and brings you opportunities for your business. That's why I will share with everyone the information about the programs, initiatives that Johnny's involved in. So I hope this also brings some opportunities for you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate this. Is the first interview we did with an African country, so I'm really excited. Any final comments or words for our viewers?
So, what I would like to say as an African is that we are not only, the birthplace of humankind. Africa is the future of humankind. Literally, almost everybody knows that. Um, I invite people to visit the African continent, whether you want to come to this beautiful nation of South Africa or you want to go to Senegal or you want to go to Nigeria. Don't believe everything you read, everything you hear. Africa is better experienced in person. right? It's best experienced in person. Come to South Africa, experience the hospitality, the beauty, the vibrancy of this beautiful nation. And I want to say you will never be disappointed. So I'm inviting people to come and visit South Africa, whether they come to Johannesburg, where I am now, or they go to Cape Town, or go to Durban, or you go to the Kruger National Park. There's so much to see in South Africa. South Africa is actually the world in one nation. So I'm inviting people to come and visit South Africa.
Absolutely, and I agree with Johnny. I've been to South Africa. It's amazing. I love my experience. And like you said, so many other places in Africa to visit. So thank you so much. Thank you, Johnny, for your time. Thank you, Dietry. And I hope everybody enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Raphael. Thank you. Bye for now.
Thank you.